with the proven ability to build, organize, and align compliances and security initiatives. He has Big Four consulting and audit experience, which comprises international and domestic. He's a specialist in information systems and business process audits and control assessment across various information systems using internal control framework with COSO, COBIT. He has specialties in risk management, SOX compliance, information security consulting, IT audit, and internal audit. With this, I am now asking Mr. Siddharth to take the session. Here, Mr. Siddharth, you have.
Thank you, Manoj. Good morning, everyone. Manoj, can you confirm I'm audible?
Yes, Siddharth, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. Is the screen okay now so I can start?
Yes, the screen looks perfect. You can start.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your time this morning. And it's a pleasure to talk to my colleagues from internal audit and other practices. Thank you for expressing your interest to listen to me this morning. What I share with you are my views and not necessarily from my company, so that's a disclaimer. Please feel free to add comments. What I've tried to put in on my slides is something that I have experienced, and I have come across during my projects and internal audit specifically. So they're not necessarily therefore inclusive comments or everything that I would talk about the subject. So it's just sharing my experience, and that's how I bring it up. Talking a little bit more about the topic, why I chose this topic, extended enterprises. It's becoming a norm every day as we see, and that's the reason, and we can't live without them. We see them everywhere around. So that makes it very pertinent for all IA function, IT audit function people to make sure that's something on their agendas and that it's not overlooked and it's sufficiently covered, audited, and that our assurance we provide are inclusive of these extended enterprises. We are no longer isolated by legal entity boundaries anymore. So that makes the topic interesting for me, and I hope you find this discussion or conversation also of some value. Let's begin. I'm on slide number 2 on agenda. So what I will walk you through today is we start with what is an extended enterprise, and I use a internet definition, and we start with that. Following which we will discuss why audit extended enterprises. So what should be the reasons to look at it, why we cannot overlook them. Next, we go to IT audit universe considerations. So what is it that we should consider to make sure our universe is up to date and that we include these entities, or how do we identify these entities for the audit universe considerations. Following that, we'll talk specifically about IT audit considerations. So this will include what should you do as you're planning for these audits, what other items should be of interest, where you can find information, where you can find relevant information which is useful during the course of audit. And before we sum up, we'll talk about the IT audit challenges, what kind of challenges I faced, or I will share experiences during the course of these audits. So these will go through different phases of audit. We'll talk something about planning related challenges, execution related challenges, and reporting related challenges in particular. In between, we have very small survey questions that would be of interest and helps us to identify where we stand, and maybe I can then use the results as I carry on the discussion and share with you all. So please do participate and give your feedback as and when they come in. Moving to slide number 3, what is an extended enterprise? So I use the internet definition I could pick up, and this probably comes in from one of IIA forums. It defines extended enterprises in sense that it is a concept that a company is made up not just of its employees, its board members and executives, but it goes beyond them. So what it specifically emphasizes is business partners, suppliers, and even its customers. So these 3 words make the world much larger, and that's what we call the extended enterprise. Specifically of interest for our purpose from these 3 will be the business partners and the suppliers. Suppliers if they happen to be IT services suppliers, business partners normally will be some examples that I quote below. Payroll service providers, they could be seen as processing companies for entities. Next, we talk about these enterprises are of relevance because we cannot work without them. We need them to efficiently process our business transactions. Many cases we have seen where it is in advanced stage, even not just payroll. Payroll is a very standard example, but it goes beyond payroll where we say there are other processes in procurement where there are collections or where there are invoice generation and those elements of the business process which are also commonly outsourced these days. So typically you will have your customer master and other data also flowing out to these organizations for processing your invoices. Marketing campaign as an example. So there are companies who deal with your marketing campaign. So they will have a lot of information. Some could be your IPR information, how your product is, what is the product design, some more insight onto the product features. Those also make it relevant in that sense where you engage with certain kind of management programs running for our dealers and retailers, and in that sense it runs like a airline mileage program. They accrue points, and then there is a incentive management company who will process rewards for them, so they will know who our customers are, what is their volumes, so it is sensitive information in that sense. Typically, again, picking up examples from IT world, data center, most common. More often than not, we use third-party service provider to host our data servers in a data center, which is so that makes them also an extended enterprise. Again, in today's scenario, more common way we see these extended enterprises are cloud service providers. So those will also be an extended enterprise in today's environment. They are again shared facilities. You don't know where physically they are located in some cases. In contractually, they don't bind you to agree that you know where the information will be stored. So it just provides you a platform to host your application or a platform to manage your data or whichever service model you choose from a cloud. So their physical locations are. Next, I have a survey question that Manoj can launch, and I will parallelly continue my discussion as you respond to them, and maybe once we have the results, we'll discuss that. So typically I'm asking here is, does your organization have extended control boundaries? So does your control function go beyond your legal entity? Coming to slide number 5, why audit extended enterprises? And this we're looking at more now in terms of internal audit perspective than external audit.
Siddharth,
when it comes to external audit,
hi Siddharth,
yes,
allow
Manoj.
our participant to 1 minute to poll on the poll. Just give them another 20 seconds.
Okay.
I will just share the polling result. 55% has said yes to the question. 34% has said no to the question, and 10% had said don't know, and we have 81% voting. So I believe the result.
Can you be a bit louder? I couldn't hear you very clearly. I just got that 5% said yes.
Sorry. See, 55% has said yes, 34% has said no, and 10%
Okay,
has
55,
said
sorry.
and 10% had said they don't know. So again, back to you.
Okay. Yep, thank you. So don't know, yes, maybe we have some education there, and maybe when you go back you have some questions which you could ask your organization, your stakeholders, and then maybe you can identify, so that's interesting. Uh, it's very general, like I shared at the beginning, that yes, more often it's very common these days, so not just with large entities, so that's an expected result, that yes, many entities today have service providers where controls would be extended or data will be available or shared with them for transaction processing. Coming back to slide number 5, why audit extended enterprises, and I started with sharing the perspective that when I'm discussing this, it is more from internal audit perspective. External audit has their own regulations in each countries to manage and report, and they would normally be concerned and restrict their scope to where it is financially relevant for reporting purposes, so where it will have a P&L or a balance sheet impact. So if it will typically be financial transaction processing agencies, payroll does make it significant. And the route in that case is usually to use a service auditor's report in the US, which is commonly the SSAE 16, which was in the past commonly known as SAS 70 type of report. So their external service providers would share this report, and external audit could rely on them. But personally, I feel SSAE 16 or that kind of an attestation from an independent auditor for a service organization, though may fully comply with requirements for us as a financial external auditor, but internal auditor responsibilities go beyond just the financial numbers. We would also be interested in efficiency. We'd also be interested in cost elements. We'd also be interested in privacy elements, regulatory elements that impact our organization. So typically, we may not get all the answers in that sense from our SSAE 16. So again, depends what kind of detailing is gone on the report, what controls were listed for testing. Did you contractually ask the service organization to report on specific areas? And so that will create a lot of dependencies. Could you rely fully on a SSAE 16 report or not? But for key reasons, efficiency, I don't expect efficiency would be an answer that can be tested by a service organization and be reported as a SSAE 16 item. So typically, scenarios we look at, looking at the process end-to-end, some controls are likely to be extended in the extended enterprise territory. So when you look at a process, you figure out, okay, this part of a process is not done by your own entity, by your own people. A part of it is managed by somebody else. Again, taking example from IT areas, project development, so a part of the code is developed by the third party. So when it comes to projects, and if you're looking at a project as a process, you would find that it is the third party who's doing the coding for you. So what coding standards you don't know, and it's just the requirements passed on to them. They will give you a code that you could test, and it's meeting the requirement, and it comes back and fits in into your own application or the project that will deliver a business solution. Typical example, other physical security. So physical security in a data center will always be responsibility of the organization that is hosting the data center, and we'll discuss a scenario where it could go beyond that extended enterprises in the slides coming ahead. So invariably, as a result of this, they will have sensitive information or your organization data which is relevant for you and which could be of use to others. It has some value if it is sensitive data. It has value if it is competition. Your competition could have access to that data. So unless you test and make sure by yourself that, is it adequately managed? Is it adequately protected? You will not be able to provide assurance. And that's for me a key reason why, as an internal auditor, I will be concerned by saying that, no, I cannot provide you assurance unless I've seen the process end to end, which extend beyond my organization's boundary. Again, the weakest link in a chain will be where it is weakest. So it could be at your service organization. So you have to make sure that you have checked every aspect to make sure that it's not the small aspect which is going out, which makes the whole process vulnerable or weak in that sense. Moving ahead with some more areas why we audit them. Again, some of these examples are not so relevant in external audit world for the reasons that they will restrict their scope. And so we continue more with the aspects of internal audit, why it will be relevant for internal audit, why we should still audit these. There are many risks. Dependencies are not clearly defined, for example. Who will do what in the process? Normally what you do is define how it will run, and then over a period process changes, and then when you look at the process as an independent auditor, you find out that there are certain dependencies which are not defined. Maybe the backup process changed over a period, what you need to back up, how often do you need to back up, but that never got documented or that never got understood. So as a backup process, it's still the old way that only certain elements of data are being backed up, but newer systems that have gone live are outside of the scope because you never managed to fix that or never found out that backup is incomplete when you look at a service organization. Processes may be inefficient, cost, quality, sustainability, continuity. So your service organization started today, maybe you handle 1,000 transactions a month, and over a period your business has grown. But do you know if your service provider organization is equally upscaling, or then they start to fail meeting the SLAs, they're not able to do transactions in time, and that could impair your business growth. So this is a specific example where you as an internal auditor can review a extended enterprise, go back and tell your management, we expect that we have to agree with our service providers to upscale the services. The reason for SLAs failing we identify is they have not ramped up their staff or their resources to meet our requirements. And if we expect growth on certain percentage year on year, we can expect there'll be more such failures from an extended enterprise. Roles and responsibilities, typically SLA, which I already mentioned, insufficient contractual terms. Contracts are normally signed 1 year, 3 year, and then when it comes to renewal cycle, typically it is last minute rush. More stress is on the financial terms of the conditions. So normally there will be negotiations around what should be the volume, what should be the rates, and somehow what doesn't get as much focus is other contractual terms. Legal regulatory requirements change over period. There's privacy requirement that's come in our own country now. So if you had a contract which was 5-year-old, probably there were not as stringent requirements then, which now are applicable. So these often get overlooked in an ongoing contract. New contracts, when you're doing it gets a specific attention, but then this is not one time. We have to make sure that it is happening every time we look into the contracts. So that also makes it necessary not just start with the enterprise, but also start with the basic contract. Look up what is it that the service organization is bound to provide you as a service. What are the roles and responsibilities defined? Possible breaches, fines from regulators, damage to reputation. All these can happen as a result of failure of a process at your service organization. But we have to mind it that for our stakeholders, we are the ones accountable. Even if a failure happened not directly due to your irresponsibility or your mishandling of information, but because at a site which is managed by service provider, it is still going to be us as an organization, our management, who is answerable to the stakeholders, to the customers, to the business partners, and everybody else. So for them to be accountable, they will need some comfort. They will need some comfort where our audit can help them and make sure that the controls are well managed in terms of data integrity, confidentialities, and they are less likely events that could occur as a failure of those controls. Next, I have a survey question for you where I ask you, do you as internal audit function include internal extended enterprises in your audit universe? So does that feature in your scope? It will come in your scope automatically when you'll start including them in your audit universe. By audit universe, largely we mean is like your scope boundaries. What all does your organization do that is applicable for you as an auditor? What all areas will you consider when you do your risk assessment, when you start to look at processes, IT systems, typically as an IT auditor, where is the data flow? So with these considerations, do you see that in specifically IT audit domain you already have? Do you include them?
The poll is running. Now we have 30 seconds more.
Okay.
Okay, I'm closing the poll and now I am sharing the poll. 72% has said yes and 28% had said no, and we
Mm-hmm.
have now the don't know is 0%, which is a very good thing. And back to
Okay.
you.
Okay. Thank you, Manoj. So, interesting result. No, yes, if I expect there are no extended enterprises applicable in the domain or in your organization, yes, it will be a straight no. But I will not have service responsibility within them. Let's move ahead with the presentation. I'll go on to slide number 8. So typically now we'll discuss the IT audit universe considerations. And these considerations not just restrict to IT audit. Because I come from IT audit, I quote it more often, but you will find that these are equally applicable in internal audit domain. So when you start to look at process audits, which typically will be done by internal audit function over IT audit, these are still applicable, that you need to have extended enterprises in your IT audit your universe, or also internal audit universe. So typical questions would be, who should we include? There could be many service providers. Is everybody relevant for audit? So that would be a typical question. What are the criterias? What criterias do you apply to assess them? Will it be just data, because data is residing there? Will it be like, understanding the process end to end, identifying what part of the process do they do it? Maybe they don't handle or massage any data. They're just custodian, right? There could be an agency that is just keeping your paper records, right? Offsite record management. So every condition you'll have to ask multiple questions, decide criteria where it will be applicable. So there's no straight yes, no answer just by knowing the name or service that you could decide should it be in scope or out of scope. Even for reasons, you may have a record management company very much in scope where it is handling your regulatory requirements. So in a telecom business where you have the subscriber registration form, which are typically then transferred to an offsite storage location, you may have to recall if there is a dispute with a customer or with a large customer who disagrees on what contract terms he signed upon. How do you find this out? Let's look at scenarios. Review IT contracts, specifically ones relating to IT operations. When you look at IT contracts, you'll know the nature of contracts. So I'll go to my stakeholders, ask, can I have a look at all the contracts we have running and who all support us? So that will give me a holistic inventory of what all do I have. And then maybe I can ask relevant questions and ask more information to identify who should be in my horizon, who shouldn't be. Budgets for large projects. So typically, again, contracts will address ongoing ones, but if you look at the project list, that also gives you short-term, they are soon gone. So you probably want to be intervened. Will it be meaningful to include them and look at what risk could be organization exposed to as a result of project being outsourced or parts of project being outsourced. Check if IT security compliance function include third parties, extended enterprise while performing their own risk assessment, control assessments for typical standards, ISO 27000, 20000, ISMS purposes. So discuss with your own information security staff, who will also give you information that what they have already identified. So that's a straight win for you, that you could already include what they have already identified as critical. So that goes in straight away into your plans. Slide number 9, continuing with the topic universe considerations. Engage, discuss with IT operations and business application staff. So the more you talk to them, more you identify who does what in the organization, what are the responsibilities. Over period, in a large organization, typically auditors are not at every location. So when you go to a new location, you may not be fully aware what's changed since you last audited that facilities or last looked at those business aspects. So whenever you have an opportunity, discuss with them to identify what's going on. Data flow, architectures, landscapes, ask for this information, and then probably that's an indicator. Where is this facility? You see a server and then you see it's not a location which is your own organization location, probably then you know, oh, okay, this is a cloud service provider that's coming now and it was a recent contract. So these information, if you review critically and look at what are the inventory of systems in place, what are the applications, you can ask these relevant questions and you may know that some of it is still relevant for you. Service provided by external staff, consultants. Look at what kind of service do they provide, so this will help you. This will help you again identify the nature of services, gets you more information. Service or IT operations managed by third parties, data center, media tape storages. Review vendors, the nature of their contract, and this typically comes back again because now we are talking non-IT as well. So non-IT as
Hello. Hello, Siddharth.
internal audit. If it is IT audit, it's still more relevant. So we could look at how pervasive is this extended enterprise. Manoj, can you launch?
Yes, 1 second. Actually, now we lost you for
Sure.
last 2 minutes. So if you don't mind, can you repeat what you were mentioning for last 2 minutes?
Which slide was I at?
Yes, the slide 2.
Slide, second slide on the IT Audit Universe?
Yes.
Okay. It was in continuation to some more items that we discussed on the IT Audit Universe considerations. And here again, typical examples include, where all can we find more information that will be useful for updating the IT Audit Universe. Typically, IT Audit Universe, we update on a quarterly basis at a high level and at a detailed level once in a year, and that's before we kick off the planning cycle for audit plan for every year. So typically Q3 will be the time, end of Q3, when we start with updating the IT Audit Universe, and then we start looking for information. We will contact staff. So those are examples, engage with IT operations, business application staff, ask them questions. And what I was sharing here was, typically organizations keep changing. Auditors are not at all locations. So there could be changes within your subsidiary companies that you're still responsible for, that you have not seen maybe for a year, and new contracts can come in which did not exist before. Likewise, data flow diagrams, your system landscapes, reviewing them helps you understand what is where, and then you can identify if some bits of it are not within your own organization. So you could again check back and see if there is still an extension or a new service provider that comes in as a result. Again, then service providers, external consultants, application support, development, staffing arrangements. You could check with each of these contracts. Some of these are in-house. Some of these could be outsourced. Again, with staffing arrangements, there are people who do provide you staff on a man-hour basis, but there are others who will do it on a project basis. So depending on the nature of contracts, it can still differ what responsibilities do they carry. Service or IT operations managed by third parties, typically data center, media tape management. So what in our case we found out initially was that, yes, we had given data center operations to a third party to manage, but they had subsequently sublet media management to another service provider who was a professional in that area, right? So in that sense, my company had no direct contract whatsoever with the media management company, but it was a subcontract managed by my service provider. So then we had to extend this one step further, and I'll come back to this example also in IT audit considerations later. Manoj, now we have identified, so that shows numbers are going up over period. Manoj, can I have the survey question, please?
Just give me a second. I'm launching the survey. Here it launched.
Sure.
Fifteen seconds remaining. Okay, I'm closing the survey, and now the screen is visible. The result is visible on the screen. We have 41% who had said 0 to 2, 34% 3 to 5, 24% more than 5.
Okay, so yes, typically larger the organization, and you will find that more and more service organizations are engaged with you. So more and more it is getting complex, so the number also goes up. So that also helps you, how do you plan for auditing these service organization. Sometimes they do more than one work. So if you're visiting physically facilities of a service organization, maybe you know what all services have they extended to your organization, and you could cover that as part of the same visit rather than just cover parts of the process. Okay, moving ahead next to slide number 11, IT audit considerations. So when I say IT audit considerations, what I have in mind is typically these are considerations which help us with planning the work, getting the information, developing the audit work program or audit program, as you will call it. So all of this then goes into your pre-audit activities as a part of the planning process. So let's start with the considerations. Slide number 11. Understand the level of inherent risk from service providers handling of sensitive information. What is the risk? What is the information they're handling? Do they keep the information with them? Do they give you back the data once it is processed? All this help you understand what will be the inherent risk that they carry. If it is, quickly within few hours the data is processed, returned back, maybe you don't want to see physically how they're storing the data, right? But if it is retained there for after transactions are processed, then it is still significant. So it may help you understand, plan your work, what parts of controls would you be interested in testing at the third-party location or not. Gain an insight into the service provider's approach and practices relating to information security, IT risk management. So discuss with their people, interview them as you're planning. How do you manage? Are you certified for any standards? So asking these questions help you understand that, what should you expect in terms of maturity level of information processing or information security, handling data that would be expected in their organization. If they say they're certified, then typical controls that are applicable for that environment. And if it is a standard from ISO 27000, you could typically ask, give me your scope statement and let me identify if the scope is sufficiently covering parts of the organization that support transaction processing for my organization. So it becomes relevant to ask for then subsequent information to perform your tests. Understand service provider's environment to verify if there are further extensions. This example I already discussed before, subcontracting. So unless you discuss and identify who does what parts of the project or the service within the extended enterprise, you will not know if there is a scenario where it is subsequently been outsourced to another service provider. And typically, example I had seen was media management, environmental controls, hardware AMCs. So typically you have IBM or HP who are then contracted by these data center service providers for those contracts. So you may not be interested in auditing them, but at least you would want to review the contract and make sure that the level of support agreed is adequate to meet your service continuity requirements. So if it is a critical server, you expect it's a gold level support or an on-site support that the data center service providers agreed with their subcontracted agencies. It could be IBM or HP for hardware suppliers or server maintenance. If they have 3-day support or standard support, they can expect if there is any downtime, it could be a situation where you will have a service outage or a facility outage because their contracts are not adequately supporting it. Establish and test service provider compliance to contractual obligations. So typically pick up the contract, see what your organization is mandated for them to comply with. It could be your own internal policies, SLAs, other contractual requirements, privacy requirements if they're specifically applicable in a scenario where you're handling customer information or personally identifiable information. It should be part of the contract. So pick up and check contract terms, and that makes you a checklist again to add up to your work program, what to audit when you are going to visit the facilities or when you're going to ask for information. Continuing on slide number 12 with some more considerations, has the process of effective tracking, escalation, and issues resolution defined. So typically there will always be a scenario where there will be some issues that need stepping in of higher authorities or higher responsibles, and typically when you are dealing with third parties, you need to understand in terms of process efficiency, how is this defined? Is it defined or not? Or when a problem comes, they will start to struggle who to contact, who to escalate, and that could cause delays or process efficiencies that could be defeated in your enterprise. And as a result, you are the company who's suffering because it wasn't defined upfront. Even when it is defined, it needs to be continuously reviewed because roles change, people change, and then you should make sure that your service organization is also informed of such changes so that if there is an escalation or issue that they have to raise up, they know who to contact. Gain an insight into service providers' approach and practices relating to information security and specifically IT risk management. Do they do their own risk management? So again, relevant, if they have applied standard frameworks, it will be good for you. You could baseline that certain maturity level exists. But if not, then you probably have to design certain controls to also assess that. This typically helps in with long-term contracts or where their major transactions are done with those organizations and it's large volumes, then you will still be concerned. If you do petty transactions once in a while, small volume of transactions, then it may not be as much relevant to understand their risk assessment. But if it's higher volume, high numbers are at stake, you would be interested in looking at that area as well. Further, going down, create awareness. So it is your organization. Do they create awareness? Again, ongoing, because we discussed things, process, responsibilities, contractual obligations, regulatory requirements. All of these keep changing from time to time. So you also need to keep educating. So this will be a question relevant for your own staff. Do they do this? Right? Otherwise, there will be certain areas to pick up and see what was the last major change in terms of a process or in terms of a contractual obligation, and then you can pick up that it's not complied with. If they have been doing education, then you are more assured that yes, the service organization may be aware of those changes, so it will only be to check adequacy if they have understood and applied those changes well enough. Lastly, compliance periodically. Does the compliance function also periodically assess the service organization? It could be a compliance function in IT security, the IT security compliance or security officers, the business information security officers. Discuss with these people. Do they do their independent assessments on third parties? Ask for those reports, and they go in to identify known issues. So you can check what is the condition now. Is they being adequately addressed, or that it still needs focus, so that's already known to you as you're planning for your work. Moving ahead, IT audit challenges. Now these are typically what you will consider during the progress of your audit once you have started to execute your audit. So typically we'll start with audit scope areas. So as part of planning, you have defined the scope. So what should be in scope, out of scope? Scope can change during your field work. When you start to understand the process or actually start to audit, you find out that the information or document you had is redundant, but now it's changed. So maybe the service provider changed the operating system because he's not concerned with, you are not concerned with what operating system as long as the servers are running and services are available on an application front. But for you to check is the operating systems adequately hardened, you need a specific checklist for a relevant operating system. So this will mean change in scope. You have to plan your work again. Something is out of scope because maybe they changed the design and now they've consolidated servers into one physical box using a virtual environment. So that will also entail a change in scope, that you need to audit only those set of boxes. Others are not relevant anymore for you. Access to information, extended enterprise facilities and environment. So will you get access to these information and facilities? So this will be considerations. Again, contract should already address this, that you will always have a right to audit their facilities, ask for information, and in reasonableness they have to support such audits being performed by your organization. All said and done, you identified, but then you come across, no, you can't physically visit their location. It's out of bound, it's not contractually agreed. When it's a large enterprise and there are multiple departments dealing with the single service provider, and within service provider there are different services they offer to the same enterprise. So it's then a challenge for the auditor to find out who's relevant for which service, who will answer what questions. Maybe contract is central, so it's somebody else from outside the IT department. IT department can only answer questions relevant for that. Likewise, for service organization, there can be many individuals responsible for different areas, and not everybody from IT function who is able to answer these questions for you. So typically, you will have to identify who's responsible for what, get those names, contact those people. So when you start to execute, you're able to get the right information from the right person and not rely on somebody which is not correct. Again, typically, these are not all the kind of challenges. There can be cross-border issues. So you identify that your service organization is not within your own country. It is more pervasive in Western world, where they started to initially outsource to Asia, typically India, right? So you identify that service organization not physically there, right? So how do you deal with it? So you still have to plan your work accordingly. Do you need to be there? Can you send a questionnaire? Can you send tests to be performed? Do you have operations in that country where other audit functions could help you perform that? All that scenarios will kick in just by knowing where these entities are. Continuing on the challenges, I'm on slide number 14 now. Who to agree audit findings with? Once you've found out observations, question who to agree with. Should it be just the service organization? Should it be your own people also who are responsible for the process, or both of them? Typically, if you are to get a buy-in and you have to make sure that there will be seriousness and the audit report is put on management stable, they would want to know that a responsible is from your own company. They're not concerned what is the service organization doing it. So it is more important to have the buy-in from your own staff or your own company responsible, but equally, because the implementation will eventually come back to the service organization, you should discuss the findings also with the service organizations during the fieldwork stage, so that you make sure they understand what are the nature of findings and what is it that is expected of them to fix the issue. Can the full IT audit report be shared? We have seen some examples in the past, and I have seen typically also in one of my employees that you receive an audit report, IT auditor saying so and so are the gaps, and you hand over the report. Please take it, fix it for me, tell me how long will it take for you to fix, 15 days, 1 month, and that's how you're negotiating. You put the entire responsibility back. As an auditor, you are concerned because audit observations may be not everything from the service organization. There could be other internal audit findings which are still part of that report, which are not relevant for service organization. So as an auditor, you have to educate your auditees, your own company, if you're going to deal with that, only give them specific information which is relevant for them. Don't just share the full report. It can have other confidential information which could be demeaning for your own company. Tracking action plans to closure. So will it be your responsibility or your company's responsibility versus third parties? So yes, eventually, though the task may be executed by the third party, but you have to make sure that somebody responsible from your company is tracking that. So it is not that you have just passed on the information and then sleep over it, that service organization will fix it. Make sure that you identify a responsible from your own company who will have to constantly follow up. Risk acceptance. So that's another scenario. So if there is a huge cost, for example, to fix a gap at the third-party service location, and that's not something you could do on the fly, it will need maybe higher-level negotiations, and as a interim, there's no proper or a long-term solution to such a issue. In such cases, you will typically find that you have to accept that risk, knowing there's a cost involved. So make sure that when such a scenario happens, all information which is relevant is understood by your own organization. It's not that the service organization is trying to give part of the information and say no, we can't fix this, and you just have to accept the risk, or using power tactics to get more money on a contract. So you can help your own management to identify such situations, in what to accept risk or in what not to accept risk, and then insist that the service organization has to fix it. More often than not, the contractual obligations are not clearly identified. So if it is already done, then it is full service organization responsibility to make sure they comply, and any additional cost as a result of those mitigations will have to be borne by third parties. So it should not be that they start to backtrack and quote that the contracts are not clear. So it will again come in handy if the contracts are clear and that information is typically addressed, or the risk is accepted only in very valid scenarios. In terms of slides, that's what I have. I can see we have a few more minutes. Manoj, can we have questions from audience if there's specific questions people would like to ask me?
Yes, we have a question. The question is pertains to, is it ethical to access data of external service providers?
Okay. Is it ethical to access service providers' data, right? So when I say data, I'm asking for my own data in this case. So I'm not typically interested in, tell me what is your organization doing for others. And this will typically be a scenario where, service providers don't want everybody to look in when there is a co-hosted facility, right? So you don't want information as information. You want controls around that information which you're interested in as an auditor. That what are the controls adequate in safeguarding that information, processing that information. So typically I will not make copies of that data or ask them, send me a backup of this, and I want to do analytics for data which is not just my organization. It will be unethical, and that's something a third party may say no to you also. So I see that where you're asking for controls are general process controls, and you should be able to access and ask for process documents or procedure documents, which typically are not then information that third party should be protecting or disallowing you from accessing.
Do we have questions? Yes, we have another question. It's from Mr. Ramnath Kamath. What are the options available to me as an internal auditor where the SLA agreement for handling customer information does not have right to audit the service provider's processes?
So typically you will still raise this as an issue, right? So whenever you're looking at that process, I would still want to raise that as an audit observation itself, right? So of course, at this stage, because there is no contractual obligation or agreement, I cannot force myself into a third-party location and start to audit. But then I have to first raise this as an issue and explain to the management why this is a big risk, what is the criticality or the parts of process that are within the service organization, and what are the pressing reasons why we should audit them, or how can I get assurance it is for our own benefit. And then that will come in as an action that when we renegotiate the contract, or we'll do an addendum to the contract as a closure to this audit observation, and make sure that they extend the option of auditing the third-party locations. Typically, in a large contract, it is a standard term, but it's though set as standard, yes, you can expect, unless you have reviewed it, that it is something which is overlooked, right? So unless you see it go through that contract terms, you will not know. First question. If it is not there, that's an audit observation for your own management first to fix it. You'll have to specify the risk. And some parts of risk we already discussed during the presentation, why you should have access to their facilities. And that will help you get a buy-in from your management to agree on an addendum or sign up changes to the terms of contract with your service provider to allow them to come and audit you. Manoj, we have more questions?
Yes. Do we have more questions? It seems we do not have more questions.
Okay. I'm happy to share my contact information, my mail ID, so feel free to approach me if you will have specific questions or you did not understand. And like I said at the opening of my slides, these are my own views. And of course, these are not everything encompassing the auditing of an extended enterprise. These are some challenges, these are some experiences that I have gone through, which I thought is worthwhile sharing with my colleagues. I hope it added some value to you, and you found this of some benefit, so you could have some takeaways, something helps you do a good business case in terms of why risk exists and why you should do it where you have not been doing so far. So I hope it's a value for you. And I thank Manoj for your time and inviting me to take up this session, and I look forward again to
Thanks, Siddharth. I, on behalf of Bombay chapter and delegates, thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience. We would be looking forward to hear you once again. And to the participant, I'm sincerely apologize for various voice issues. Hopefully, we'll be able to do a little better on that front next time. And we thank you for your patience and continuous support to the Bombay chapter. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.